everybody, I'm Grace Kelly. And this, my friends, is Go with me, Grace Kelly. Hey everyone, my guest today is Alonzo Boden. He's a comedian and actor. He won NBC's Last Comic Standing in Season 3. He's a regular on NPR's Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, starred in his own comedy special, Who's Paying Attention on Showtime, released his own DVD, hosts his own podcast. He's been featured on many late-night TV shows, including The Tonight Show with Jay Leno. He's a lover of motorcycles, and I've actually seen him play the cowbell, and he keeps very good time, believe it or not. And he's really, really funny. Let's go wait for him backstage. Come on. Hey!
Grace!
Alonzo.
¿Qué pasa?
Hey.
I speak Spanish because we're in San Juan.
Yes, yes.
Try to blend with the locals.
Right. Please, come into the office.
I know, this is you guys' office.
This is our rehearsal space.
Yeah, I actually took a picture in here. I'm the only one who doesn't need this. All of you working here, I just passed by.
For our viewers, we are at the Blue Note at Sea Cruise, and we are currently rocking a very slow rock back and forth.
Yes, we always do going into Puerto Rico. I don't know how many of these you've done.
I've done 3.
Okay, so once you become a veteran, you kind of learn the different islands. Mm-hmm. So there's something about the Atlantic as you sail into San Juan.
Yeah.
Boat always rocks.
Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us. This is Go with Grace Kelly. I'm here with my very special guest, Alonzo Boden.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello.
Thank you. Thanks for joining. The real interest for me is talking to all sorts of artists, whether it's musicians, comedians, dancers, and getting to talk a bit about the creative process. And I don't know, I think creativity to me is this thing that's it's like this invisible thing, right? And so I love the idea of being able to try to talk about what we do and bring it to the audience.
Well, one thing you said about creativity being this invisible thing, I believe there is an energy, like a creative energy, that certain people have, and maybe we all have it, I don't know, but I tap into it sometimes, and it's nice when I feel it, like when you just feel creative. It's usually for me after shows.
Ah, interesting.
Because my mind is so in that mode that if I'm writing, then the best I do is do it after a show. Like
getting more ideas and content,
right.
And do you take out your iPhone, and do you have a?
Yeah, I switched about 3 years ago.
Okay.
From writing in notebooks to taking notes on my iPhone.
Gotcha.
And now I think I may switch back.
Why is that?
It imprints better on my brain when I write it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Physically writing it out imprints it on my brain, so it's easier to remember.
Right.
But But the nice thing about the iPhone is it's very quick, and it's automatically organized, right? So if I want to look up jokes about any topic, I can just type that in search, and anything I ever wrote on that topic anything with that keyword pops up, right?
Right.
But the bad thing is, and this just happened, my iPhone crapped out, so I bought a new one. Here's a lesson for all you viewers. When you sync your iPhone, that's not the same as backing it up.
Oh, I'm always so confused with that process.
It's not the same. So when I got my new one and they said, is it backed up? I was like, well, yeah, because I sync it, my computer all the time.
Right.
Wasn't backed up, so I lost a few hundred pictures and a bunch of jokes and ideas gone.
Gosh, that's the worst.
It sucks, but it's also like, well, good, now you got to write new stuff.
Right.
Because I always need a challenge. You know, so.
Yeah, I keep a list of any word ideas, or sometimes I'm walking down the street and I hear someone say something and I keep it all in my iPhone. I was doing this interview recently where they're following me around with a camera, and she goes, the woman who was holding the camera, so let's stage you at the park, and would you usually bring a notepad and pen, if you were writing lyrics? I'm like, no, I just bring my phone. And she's like, well, let's bring the notepad and pen anyways, because it probably doesn't look as good if I'm just like,
yeah.
You know.
Although, I mean, it's just a sign of the times, right? Digital age.
Right.
So now, at your age, I didn't know if you knew what notebooks were. I was going to explain. Yes, you have to take all the age jokes on the ship.
You're the only comedian on this ship with all these musicians, which first of all...
Well, Robert Glasper qualifies.
Robert Glasper is hilarious.
Robert's in the club.
And this is what, your third week of sailing?
Yeah.
So, first question is, what is it like for you being the only comedian with all musicians?
Oh, and you've heard me say this before, I'm the fan with the best seat in the house. Right, and part of why I got this gig is I'm a big fan of jazz. I know who the musicians are, and early on when I started making fun of them, they were like, wow, this guy knows us. So being a fan, I get to hang out backstage, I get to listen to the stories, I get to talk, and some of you musicians, particularly jazz musicians, are the most creative people on earth. Like it's such a different process, because comedy is intellect, and music is emotion. Now, obviously there's intellect involved, but music sparks emotion. So to me, like when you pick up the saxophone, and by the way, I had one semester of tenor sax in junior high school, which taught me I have no musical talent at all.
Oh wow!
Right, but
you need a spare tenor on this show.
You can pick that up, and just blow in it, and you make music. That's fascinating to me. Like to the average person, like we have no comprehension. Honestly, to you it's natural, right? It's like you've been doing it all your life, I'm sure. Right. But to us, that is the most. Well, to me, that's the most amazing thing.
But likewise, the thing to me when I'm watching your shows, and I wanted to dive into this, it's like you could take a joke. Because you do a lot of improvisation right at the moment with the people right there, some of them looking really nervous as you call on them, and you say, don't be nervous, and they'll say something, and it's like, and you'll connect, and it's wildly funny. 30 minutes go by, and then you're ending the show, and you link it back to that moment, and it's like, my mind is blown, because I completely forgot about that moment, and I was trying to think in my head, like, a parallel for musicians, maybe that's like, motivic development, in our solo, but that's what really fascinates me about how your brain is. And
it's something that I can do. Like different comics have different things, and I call that the gift. I don't mess with it. It's just I was taught really early on, never think on stage.
Okay.
Right. So you're just there. You're totally in the moment, and then someone says something, and I can't explain it, but I'll go with that. And then somebody's going to say something else, and one thing they say is going to have something to do with what this person, and then it just comes together for me at some point. Now, sometimes I do it as a personal challenge. It's like I'm challenging myself on stage. Can I make these 5 people into a story? And it just works. And then other times, something will just happen. And it's like, that was perfect. And, I love it because the funniest thing to me is something that's funny in the moment that I can't recreate. Right. Because you had to have those people there in that situation. Unfortunately, it's bad work-wise because you can't recreate it.
I was going to say, like yesterday at your show, you were like, I couldn't have even written that if I tried.
Right. And you have that. I had one last week that was really funny because there was a woman who, I don't know if you were at the show. Wait, you were here last week? Yeah.
No, I wasn't.
No, you weren't here last week.
I was there yesterday.
You were, okay. I'm mixing up weeks, sorry.
I'm sure it's very easy to do.
So this woman said she had a jazz festival in Maui.
Okay.
And she wanted to meet musicians.
Okay.
But in talking to her, she didn't have any budget to fly them to Maui. So it was kind of like, if you happen to be in Maui,
if you happen to want to,
you want to perform for free. Yeah. So then another woman worked for a company that made caskets, right, which was a whole thing. And then another guy, he was upstairs. He was a piano player, kind of, amateur, this or that. So I was just joking, like, have you ever been to Maui? I said, well, if you ever go to Maui, I got a friend. And everyone laughed because they knew and I said, and just in case you go and have a horrible accident, I got another friend, and everyone just lost it. And then I just ended the show because I knew I wasn't going to top the casket callback.
Right.
And it's fun when you do something like that and the crowd fills in the blank. So.
Do you ever have moments, because I know that's a perfect example of really leaving on a high note. I mean, for me in a set, like, I know that the last song is going to be big. It's going to be, people will rise to their feet. I can end on a big note. Does it ever happen when you're searching for that last moment and you don't quite get there?
Only because, and again, this is something I was taught early. Like, we have closers. Comics have closers, right?
Yeah.
And you have a joke or a bit that you do at the end of the show, and it's just that. It gets the big laugh, or the applause break. And this guy said, don't depend on a closer, because you'll start doing that better than the other jokes. So he said, so what he taught me, and I always thought it was great advice, he said, move it around. He said, mess yourself up. Do your closer in the middle of the set, and then figure out how to close on something else. It doesn't always work, but it works. It's a good exercise. And then the other thing they said is, if you get the big laugh, shut up. And what they mean is, so if I'm supposed to do 45, right, and at 42 I get a big laugh, I'm done. I don't have to do the last 3 minutes. You know, if you can't stop way too soon, but you know, if you're close and you get that big laugh, nobody's gonna be like, hey, I was short 5 minutes.
Short.
That cheap son bitch didn't give me my last 5 minutes.
We're not gonna pay.
Yeah.
We're not gonna pay them
so
extra.
you learn things like that, and then other sets, especially, and the most creative, most fun sets are the little ones, right? When there's 15 people.
For me too. Yeah.
And those, I can just stop talking. Like, yeah, okay, we're done. And they're cool with it. It's because the whole energy of the set has been kind of low-key, conversational.
There's a lot of parallels between comedy, especially your style when you're improvising, and jazz. I mean, Dave Chappelle talks about it. Working with Stephen Colbert, it is interesting. He told me and the audience that of all the people he interviews, he gets the most nervous interviewing musicians, which like blows my mind. He'd be like, I could interview the president. He's like, I wouldn't be nervous. But musicians, he said, it comes out of thin air, and I guess he thinks that's so amazing, although I think the same of what you guys do. But a lot of times when I'm trying to explain improvisation to somebody, I bring up like two comedians riffing off each other because of that improvisational, whose line is it anyways, is the easiest way to kind of jump into it.
Yeah, and that kind of comedy, like whose line is it anyway, improv, is a whole different talent, whole different thing than verbal improv that stand-ups do. Although a lot of comics can do both. But and that's where it's funny, because TV, I don't know how much you deal with TV and TV executives and so on. They don't get it, right? They don't, because they don't do it. So a few years ago, well, now it's more than a few years ago, but when Whose Line Is It Anyway was huge, and Wayne Brady was, blowing up, and I know Greg Proops, who's on the show, I know Drew Carey and all.
Okay.
So they wanted to do improv shows, right?
Yeah.
So they were like, all right, well, all we got to do is and TV loves young, right? So they're like, we'll get 5 stand-ups who are like 25, 26 years old, and we'll put them together. And it didn't work. And it was like, you understand Wayne's been doing this forever. Like he's really good at improv, and he has a whole skill set. He can dance, he can sing, or Greg Proops is like a walking, living dictionary, who can, there's no topic you can bring up that he doesn't know and stuff, So improv comes from, and even the verbal stuff that I do, that you hear Dave Chappelle do, that you hear comics do, that comes from years of doing stand-up. Because you know how to be funny. The big part that people don't understand is how much we listen. You have to listen to be a comic, and
just like in your everyday life.
I think it's a habit we have, or something ingrained. It's something that at times I wish I could turn off. Because
you're like always eavesdropping.
It's an observational thing that, sometimes it gets in the way of enjoying something. I had an experience recently with a movie. I don't know if did you see The Arrival? I think it was called The Arrival.
I have not. I've heard it's great.
Okay, I need to see it. Then I can't ruin it for you. I won't ruin it. I won't do a spoiler, but I will say that at the end of the movie, I walked out and my friend was like, "Oh, that was great," and this and that, and I was like, "It's a chick flick." And she's like, what? And I explained my analysis, and she was like, I'm so glad I can just go watch a movie. And I'm like, yeah, I wish I could. I can't just, I gotta, this is what's behind this, and and so on. So I'm always, comics are always looking behind the curtain.
And it's interesting because similarly, for me, when I go see music or just walking around and I hear the sound of the ship and the motors going, it's a song, right? Or the subway, I have to pull out my phone and record it because I'm like, do, 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 do. And a similar thing with lyrics, sometimes I'm listening and I hear someone say a phrase and it's like, well, that's really odd, you know. I just heard an interview of Fiona Apple was saying that's where she gets a lot of her inspiration, when someone just says something really, like, awful or weird, you know. And sometimes I have to really press myself to turn that off, to try to enjoy a concert as someone who's not a musician, but it's hard.
Yeah, and sometimes I do, especially I can do it watching a brilliant comic work, you know. Then I'm just like, wow, I'm just watching and listening, and it's fascinating to me to listen to their process. But the other thing is, and I get this on the ship all the time, oh, this is material for you, this is material for you. And it's the most annoying thing in the world.
I feel the same way, but yeah,
because it's like, you have no idea what's material for me. Like,
exactly.
Like if it's simple enough for you to see it, then I'm not going to use it.
Right.
You know, it's like sometimes I'll take what they say and turn it against them, and that's fun. You know, but yeah, they think they have material, and
they come up like so excited, right?
Oh, it's not so much the excitement as the constant barrage.
Oh, okay.
You know, the other day I was having breakfast with Marquise, and after like the fifth person came up, he left.
Marquise left.
He was like, yo, man, how do you, he was like, I couldn't be you.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, I know.
That's
man.
how often it's happening.
I said, I can't be me. Well, because of Donald Trump, right? So everyone feels the need to tell comics that, you know, oh, you got 4 years of material, you got this and that. And it's funny you mentioned Stephen Colbert, because he was one of the more famous ones to say it, like, no, we don't.
Right.
And we don't want it. We don't want to talk about Donald Trump for 4 years. And I did the analogy last week. It would be like you playing the same song over and over. Not just every show, but just one song. Like, you're just going to play one song 20 times, and that's your set. And then tomorrow you're going to play it. I said, that's what it's like for us to be expected to do Trump jokes all the time, because it's really only one thing, right? He's gonna do or say something outlandish or stupid, and we can't, you know, and then by the time you talk about it, he's done it again.
It's the consistency of the outlandish stupid stuff. I think about this, how, you know, I'm on a stage and I'm surrounded by all these musicians, and you know, it's a full band and we're riffing off each other, and then I can step back and listen to Jeffrey Keezer play a solo, and it's just you up there. Do you like being with other comedians? Or
this is a question musicians always ask this, right? All comics want to be musicians, and all musicians want to be comics.
I don't want to be a comic, but I know some
someone said that, and I'm like, yeah, that's true, you know. But I never think about that I'm alone up there. You know, actors say the same thing. They're like, it's just you. And I don't think any comic thinks about, man, I'm alone up here. Like, that's just how we would have it. It's probably more difficult for a comic. The thing we have to learn is how to interact with others. Because we're used to being the writer, the director, the producer, and the star.
Right.
We're used to doing the whole thing ourselves. So when you share with others, it can be something you have to learn. That's acting. Acting is something you learn. Now, when comics get together, we, you know, just like musicians or anybody who shares a skill or a talent, there's a shorthand, you know. So we laugh with each other at things that the audience might not think is funny, and we may find it hilarious. Or the other thing is, we have no limit. Like, there's nothing offensive. There's nothing, oh, you shouldn't have said that. We're like, anything you shouldn't have said, we revel in. We're like, let's see how far, and if we find a weakness, well, let's pick at that scab and see, let's make him bleed, you know. But we do that. But comics only do that when we love each other. If we don't like you, we won't talk to you. you know, and we don't like a comic that's always on.
Right.
That's usually young comics. Usually it's young comics because they're trying to prove to you they're funny. And there are times when comics we can be downright depressing to be around, right? Because it's the other side of comedy. And people freak out over it, but we're okay with it because we know it's just part of who we are and it's something we have in common. But generally, yeah, we laugh at things and we talk shit to each other in a way that it's on another level because we get it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's when you know you're in. That's when you know you're there's a certain respect that comics have for each other when you're a good comic, and it feels good when you in anything. It feels good when you get that respect.
Right. Do people, non-comics, just fans and people, always expect you to be funny? Because I think like we were talking about this woman saying, "Oh, I can't fly you over, but come play." Sometimes people say to me my saxophone with me, and they're like, "Plays a song." It's like, but I'm eating dinner,
Yeah, I get that. On the ship, it's 95% of the time it's cool, and I know that if I'm walking by and I'm talking to somebody or what, if I make a little joke and make them laugh, it's it's part of the job, and that's okay. Right. I don't mind doing that, but I'm not, as Kathleen Madigan says, I'm not a joke monkey. So you can't come here, joke monkey, make me laugh. It's no, that's not how it works.
Yeah,
and that's
wine needs to wind up the toy.
So sometimes I will be walking, and I'm not a natural smiling person. So that whole resting bitch face thing, I don't know what the male equivalent is, but I have it. So sometimes when I'm just walking, people are like, "Wow, you look angry," and I'm like, "No, I just who walks around grinning all the time?" It's so. That's the most annoying thing. Smile, and it's no, I'm just walking.
Right.
I'm not skipping.
Yeah.
So
it's always an interesting thing to me that a few times I'm just walking down the street and a guy will stop me and be like, "You should smile," and it's why?
Yeah, I don't know.
I never say that to somebody.
No, I don't understand that, and and I grew up in New York where if you walk around smiling all the time, people are like, "What the hell is wrong?
Something's wrong." Yeah.
So
back in your early days, can you speak a bit about first working out material and bombing and how you would try stuff out, and if it didn't work, how would you rework it and become stronger from it? Because I guess, I was thinking about this going to jam sessions when I first started, whether someone called a song way too fast that I just couldn't hang, or I wasn't hitting the chord changes. And there's obviously a feeling of depression as soon as I walk off the stage. But then it's the question of how can I take that experience and still get up to the next jam session and work it better? What is that like in your world?
You have to do it again. Bombing's part of the job. When you're a new comic, you bomb in sets, and then once you've been doing it a while, you bomb in jokes. In other words, you'll. So now I could tell a bad joke, but I can always bounce back with something else.
Right.
But when I would bomb, it feels bad. You want to die. You want to give it up.
Because it's silent.
And then no, it's not the silence. It's time passes slow.
Oh.
Okay, so the way we do it, you might be, say you're at an open mic, you're a new comic, and you got 3 minutes, right? And in 3 minutes, there's a red light in the back of the room, and the light comes on. So you're bombing. So now you're just looking for the light. You're like, save me.
No.
And time is passing so slow, and you're like, but it's part of the process. And I will tell you this, I was pretty funny from the start.
Okay.
And I really I knew guys who bombed every time they went up, but never stopped. And they figured it out, and they got good. And some of them went on to be, great comics. And I admired that because I was like, that's much harder.
It's like getting beaten over,
But they believed, they knew they were good, and they knew the world, they'd figure it out or the world would catch up, one or the other.
Right.
But it's it's part of the process. So you try to listen and figure out why it didn't work. Sometimes it can be a word. Sometimes it can be you have to explain it more because your mind makes the jump that they don't.
They don't get.
Like I give you an example. I do a joke about racism, right? And it's like the gist of the joke is that the punchline is when it comes to scaring white people, there's nothing like black people, right? But initially people weren't getting a joke, so I had to explain, well, racism, it starts as fear, right? And then fear turns into hatred, and then hatred becomes racism. So now when I said scaring white people, they understood, oh, he's referring to the fear behind, like, in other words, to me, I know that racism comes from fear and hate and ignorance, but I had to break it down for the audience so that they would be like, oh, okay, now we know what he's talking about. So sometimes it's that. Other times it can just be a detail or a different word. But there are definitely times when you can change a word in a joke, or you can change the order of a description, switch the adjective and the noun and make it funny where it wasn't.
That's fascinating, because in songwriting, lyric-wise, there's just some words that sound better, and they don't necessarily make sense in the line, but literally how it comes out of the mouth and, the shape of it's like, oh yeah, we're going to put that word there, even though this other word would make more sense. But it's not necessarily about making sense.
Right, and you have wordsmiths, right? So you have, like, Jerry Seinfeld is a wordsmith.
Yeah.
And when you listen to his act, every word is like, makes sense, and he's gone through it and done it that way. Whereas, you mentioned Dave Chappelle, who I believe is the best, like the most naturally funny, brilliant person there is. But Dave's just funny. Not to take anything away from his joke writing or anything else, but I used to say Dave has an unfair advantage, because if you've never seen him, never heard, when he walks out and looks at you, you're like, man, this guy's funny, right? There's just something about him. He just has some inherent thing. And so he can say something, and of course the words matter, but it's also him saying it,
Right.
Dane Cook was a great example of a guy who, if you read his jokes on paper, not that funny.
Right.
But when he did them, hilarious, because his personality made the material funnier.
Right.
So I'm more on the wordsmith side. I'm more on the writing and using words and stuff like that. That's just where I am. But yeah, different comics do it different ways.
What's your process like? I mean, for me, going in and practicing scales and arpeggios, and it's part of just keeping up on the instrument and all that. I imagine that writing is much more, you're by yourself and doing it just like I do scales, but do you work on things consistently like that? Do you just leave it for the stage?
No, when it strikes me as funny, I write something down.
Okay,
when
so
something strikes me as funny. But it's another thing I joke with you guys about. No, we don't have a studio.
No studio.
No, we don't get to practice in our living room or our basement. No, we have to go on stage. Oof. You have to go in front of people.
That's
like, you
terrifying.
can think about it or write it, but until you get in front of people and say it, you don't know if it's funny or not.
That's so interesting, because for me, it's like if I came up with a new riff and a song idea, or I was playing something on the piano, I could say to my parents or friends, come hear this song that I wrote, and then get their reaction, and it's a safe place.
Yeah. Sometimes a joke will come out in conversation, and I'll be like, oh, that's funny. I got to write that down or save that. But generally I don't, and sometimes other comics will write together. It's something I didn't do enough of. I should have collaborated. I say should have just because I've been doing it so long and you develop habits. But I tell young comics, because I'm an old guy now, and it happened about 6 years ago. I started being the old guy that comics came to for advice. And I was like, wait a minute, when did I become the old guy? But I advise young comics now more to collaborate.
Okay.
But that's how we'll sometimes say, hey man, is this funny? Or we'll just, we will tag each other, right? So we have friends. So if I see a friend do something on stage and he does a joke and I'm like, oh, here man, try this, put this on the end, or this made me think of that, and they can do it in their bit. So we give each other, they call that tags. We give each other tags on jokes.
But for yourself, knowing, all you know now and your creative process and everything, what advice would you give to your 24-year-old self? Promotion. That was the side I never learned. I never learned the marketing side. Interesting.
I always loved the creative process of writing the jokes and being funny And I never thought about, so from a career aspect, especially now, we're in an environment now, like you do in this web series, you have to do it yourself.
Right.
I was kind of in a transition. My buddy John Heffron, he won Last Comic the season before I did, and we've been friends. We've competed and been friends forever.
Yeah.
And we always say, we timed it perfectly because we got into comedy right after the boom of the 80s. And then when around 2005, when social media took off, we were too old. So we timed it perfectly to never get famous, just stay right in that gray area. But no, all kidding aside, now it's a social media thing, and that's a big part of the business. It's a big part of your work. It's difficult for a lot of comics because a lot of us, and I'm one of these, we have a certain insecurity that's like, oh, I'm not going to brag about myself.
Right.
Like we never think, well, no, I'm not good enough to, and you have to, then others are so good at the promotion that they forget to do the comedy. There's a lot of that too. So I would, but the other thing I would tell my 24-year-old self is try more different things, experiment more, because I just love stand-up, and I'm one of those guys I just love doing stand-up. I've done some acting here and there. I took some acting classes, but then my comedy career started taking off, and I just preferred doing comedy.
Interesting.
So friends of mine who stayed in town, stayed in LA and worked on acting, and were talented, but some of them have made it really big. Craig Robinson and I, we're old friends, and Craig and I used to go on the same auditions.
Oh,
and
interesting.
because we're both, it was like the big black guy auditions, big black guy, big funny black guy,
Right,
blah
right.
blah blah. We both would go on those, but then he started getting them, and where I was going on the road doing comedy, he was staying in town and doing doing small parts in student films and so on. And now he's he's a movie star, and he works The Office was a big thing for him, and so on. But it's not, I don't know if there's a right or wrong. It's just different paths.
Right.
You can beat yourself up over that all the time, but ultimately, again, the creative part, the beautiful thing about stand-up, and I guess it applies to music too, is that when we're doing shows together, nobody knows who's the millionaire or who's the movie star or whatever, because in stand-up, like in Seinfeld, he did a movie Comedian, and they're like, being a famous TV star gets you 5 minutes, and then you got to be funny. Like for the first 5 minutes, the audience is like, wow.
Yeah.
But if you're not funny, they'll be like, wow, how did he have a show?
Interesting.
This guy ain't funny, because the audience is like, what are you doing right now? Or what's funny right now? And then you have, we keep going back to Chappelle, but he's a great example where when he had the Chappelle show, the last thing he wanted to do in live comedy was characters from the Chappelle show. The audience wanted to see it, but he wanted to grow and do something different as a comic. And I joke about it here. We as comics, we always have to have something new.
Right.
My Monday show and my Thursday show have to be different.
Yeah, you can't play the same set like we can.
Right, I can't. And we can't do material, like you can do songs someone wrote. Some guy wrote this song like I was joking about Alex, who I love. I love Alex Hahn. He was playing Body and Soul.
Yeah.
I was like, that was written 50 years before he was born. Literally 50 years before he was born.
Yeah.
And he gets to play that song.
Yeah.
At no point can I be like, here's a little Eddie Murphy from 1984. But I'll tell you the saddest thing about that.
Yeah.
When a great comic dies, George Carlin, Richard Pryor, their act dies with them. Nobody can do it.
That's an interesting.
Patrice O'Neill, unbelievably funny, brilliant comic that was a name but never got the fame or recognition that he would have. He died young. And this comic, Patrice was out of New York, some comic did Patrice's act on YouTube.
Okay.
As his, and we were like he was destroyed by the comedy community. People like, what the hell? What do you think people don't know?
Right.
You're doing, and then he was like, it's a tribute, and we were like, don't ever do that
Tributes
again.
just don't work.
It's sad, but that's what happens when a comic dies.
Wow.
His act dies with him.
That's true, because one of the things I think about, even some of my mentors who have passed on, it's like, thank God we have their music and we can turn it on. And the thing you were talking about, Body and Soul, and Alex on, is like, we could play Body and Soul, and Robert Glasper could put some new chords under it.
Right.
We could put a hip hop beat, and all of a sudden it's like contemporized to being our version. Mm-hmm. Going back to like your 24-year-old self and trying some other opportunities, going wider. For someone like me, I have a lot of musical things that I want to get into, and when I was younger I did musical theater. I mean, I have a lot of ideas. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people talk about getting spread too thin. So, to have these other opportunities, and to, whether it's doing acting and comedy, did you ever worry about spreading yourself too thin?
No, because I love the work.
Right.
Because I love and the creative process is the most fun part of the work.
Right.
Like once it's done, it's done. Like it's like doing a TV spot or something. I should watch it because I can learn and say, oh, I did this wrong, I did that. Instead, I don't want to watch it because I'll cringe, because I only see, but it's what I did wrong. But also it's a fact, like, okay, that's done. Like that material's gone, because I did it on TV, so now I got to work on something new. I don't look back that much, but for that reason. So spreading yourself too thin, no, because there's always some other creative challenge to it,
Right.
The only thing is you can get rusty. A lot of comics who become actors, TV stars, then they're called on to do stand-up, and they're like, oh man, I gotta dust this up. Like I gotta get up, and you'll see them, they'll go up in smaller clubs and stuff, just to get their chops back, get used to doing stand-up again, because stand-up is different than starring on a sitcom.
And you can't do take after take and stop the cameras.
Right. So people will do that, or they'll always be doing both. I love those guys. I love guys like Chris Rock, who's making movies, but you still see him at the Cellar and at the Laugh Factory and at the Improv doing stand-up, just because he loves doing it. So he's just trying to, stay sharp. Kevin Hart does that, and I like seeing that. It's fun because it's like, they still love stand-up.
I love that, watching musicians who are studio musicians or like playing on TV shows every day, and then still are out at the 1 a.m. session, at Smalls or whatever. I'd love to put in a musical component to this, and I've been working, Wycliffe and I we played Happy Birthday the other day because it came up in conversation, which was hilarious. But is there a song there's like a cowbell somewhere in the room. I'm just wondering what we can do to tie in some music, or if you have a secret talent of singing.
Dave Chappelle did it once, where he did like a jazz comedy thing. So he had, and it might have been a saxophone player, but and he would just point, and you play something. So I tell a joke. So we got to do that. We got to do some kind of jazz comedy. It helps if we have a drummer, because the drummer gets
right.
So you didn't hire a drummer.
I didn't. I have a cowbell.
Completely. She's saying cowbell because that's the only instrument I'm allowed to play.
I've seen him on
when they
stage.
jam. I get to be back there on cowbell. Now you laugh, but just keep in mind, the first band I ever played with was George Duke. See,
oh, wow.
That's where I start.
Okay.
So you with your little saxophone working your way up from nothing, I started with George Duke.
Damn.
I was on tambourine. That's right. And the only thing they told me, they said, keep it away from any microphones. We don't want you amplified in any way. But technically, I was in George Duke's band. I've also played Marcus Miller's bass. Played it horribly.
One of the few people, right?
Boom.
That's incredible.
Boom. They live all their life dreaming of playing Marcus Miller's bass. I was like, I'll start here, and we'll see where it goes. So I generally start at the top.
Right. Well, that's that is pretty incredible.
You should be happy to be playing with me, actually.
Yes.
At this point, considering my resume.
Quite.
I don't mean to brag, but these are guys that I just do drop-ins.
I remember one of the cruises, Marcus was like really forcing his bass on you. I don't think.
Yeah.
He was like, "Come on, man, come on."
Well, what it was, so Marcus wrote this song, "Doing the Butt." Right. And the bass line is doom, 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 doom. That's all it is, right? So his idea was, I'm going to teach you to play this, and it's going to blow the audience's mind when you come out playing the bass. The problem is, being Marcus, he's doing 50 other things, and I never got my lesson.
Oh, no.
I didn't. So I get my lesson one day before the show.
Oh, no. You didn't have time to practice.
Well, I was practicing backstage, but that wasn't it. The thing was, I had never played the bass plugged in. It had never been plugged in. So when I went on stage...
It's a big difference.
And it's like, dong, and the whole place, it scared the hell out, and he loved it, right? The whole band loved it because they finally had one on me, because I always rip on them, so they were all happy that they finally had something on me. But it was so funny because if you've never played amplified, you don't realize that, I just don't, and then the whole room goes, dong, so it was...
and you get in the monitor and everything.
Yeah, it was funny, but it was... It was an experience.
Did you make it through the song?
I did. Then he started playing with the pedals to try to cover up how bad I was playing. And then finally he just snatched the chord out of the bass. And he loved it. They loved it because they were like, they finally got one on me. And I was like, all right, I'll give you guys that.
And at one point in the song, when I saw you guys, I didn't see when that happened, but you all turn around and do a little dance.
Yeah, we did the butt. Yeah, we did the butt on the stage. Yeah, that was fun. Those those impromptu
it's great.
things that happen. We have a lot of fun with that. So so the only thing I can do is I can do my bar jokes.
Yeah, we can try it.
You just play, and then you just play a little something.
I love that. Will you point to me, or you want me to play under you?
You just play, and then when I point to you, you stop, and I tell the joke. All right.
Okay.
Just give us something jazzy. We're in a smoky jazz club, and two guys walk in the bar. It hurt. Elephant walks into a bar. I said, damn, this is a big bar. Horse walks into a bar. Bartender says, why the long face? Black guy, Mexican, Jewish guy walk into a bar. Bartender says, what is this, a joke? Grace is playing Hava Nagila for some reason. What are we, in the Catskills? Stop it. We're done. That's a wrap.
This is my guest, Alonzo Boden. This is Go with Grace Kelly. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace.
Pleasure. I have a little gift for you.
Oh.
Yeah?
Parting gifts.
We're talking a lot about improvisation and bringing it into the world, and so I like to... I think in food world, that's like lemons making lemonade, right? Improvising with the moment. So I got you some actually quite tasty lemon drops.
Thank you.
They've gotten great reviews on Amazon, and they are quite tasty.
They're made in Germany.
Enjoy. Yeah.
Cool. Germany's well known for lemon drops. I don't know if you're aware of that, but there's like three things. There's cars, Mercedes and Porsche and BMW, and lemon drops. Oddly, would be the other thing Germany is well known for, and it's it's catching on. It's a thing.
It's good to know because I'm going to be in Germany for all of May,
well,
so I'll be looking for the lemon drops.
For the lemon drop festival, it's right after Oktoberfest. They drink a lot of beer, and the beer sours, and then you need something. And the lemon drop festival in Germany is world renowned.
Well, I will give them your regards. I'll send your regards. Hey guys, if you enjoyed this, I'd love to hear from you, so send me a message on my website, gracekellymusic.com. Consider subscribing to my channel and share it with all your friends. And while you're on my website, you can sign up for my newsletter, which is called, drumroll please, Grace Notes. You'll get additional exclusive content that you can't find anywhere else, including on my social media. And check out my tour schedule, see if I'm coming to a town near you. And also, as I travel the world, I'll be popping up in cool locations, playing my horn and singing.